Hare Krishna, as we say in this business. We are here at the house I'm staying at. I'll give you, I don't know if you can. Sure, no problem. Now I'm speaking to the Facebook.
Okay.
So I don't know if you can see the water out here. We're just right on this big water. I don't know if you can see that. These are, oh, there you are. Yeah, she's not water.
It's me.
And we are doing an interview here. And we thought you might enjoy that. Then tonight we have another program. So, all set?
Yeah. Are you good?
Yeah.
What was your name?
Fred.
Fred from PTV Melbourne.
Fred.
Fred, P-R-E-D, Fred.
Oh, P-R-E-D, Fred.
Yeah.
Fred, yeah.
Fred with a P.
Yes. So this is, Fred is going to be interviewing me,
Yeah.
and I'm going to give evasive answers.
And Fred is from PTV Melbourne.
PTV.
Melbourne, yeah.
Yes, Fred is from PTV in Melbourne, Australia. And we're just about ready to go. So they're filming, and then I'm also we're doing this also on Facebook, so all of you can see it.
So this is all set. All I have to do is that.
Yeah, you just need to relax.
There's no business like show business. So, in the meantime, I hope you're all doing well out there. And what's our topic today?
It's a random topic.
Random.
Random stuff.
Random topics, yes.
You will be interrogated, Mara.
Interrogated.
Yeah. Get ready.
All right.
All set?
Yeah, we'll try. So we do it in parts.
Yes.
Okay. So this interview we're going to do in two parts. One is to know about ISKCON's beliefs and goodness, which is related to the common person who is not an ISKCON member. And in the second part, we will get Guru Vandana to ask some questions to you.
Yes.
From the Bhakts who has some some queries and some issues for the deeper part of the ISKCON.
Yes.
So friends, welcome to PTV Melbourne. Today we are going to talk about ISKCON, a very fast growing way of life, way of religion of the Hindu culture. ISKCON started in 1966, and it has spread worldwide nowadays. It has got more than 850 centers. And with us is Swami H.D.Goswami Das Goswamiji, who is one of the pioneer and very top influential leader in ISKCON society. Welcome to PTV Melbourne, Acharya Dev.
Thank you very much.
You have come to Australia after a gap of around 32 years.
After 32 years, right?
32 years.
Slight delay, yes.
Yeah. So how do you find the how you find the change socially and religiously in Australia?
Oh, I like Australia very much. Australia is a very beautiful country, many, many nice people. Almost all the people I meet actually are very nice, even just walking. I've been up to Queensland. I stayed actually in Currumbin Beach, and we did programs in Surfers Paradise, Brisbane, and then also in the large community we have outside Murwillumbah. Also in Byron Bay, actually. And although I'm not a surfer. And then I came down to Sydney. We had many programs around the Sydney area. And now Melbourne. So yeah, I think Australia is a great country. So many facilities, so many nice devotees, so many nice people in general. So it's been a great trip.
Wow. To our viewers, would like to tell that Swami H.D. Das Goswamiji is one of the 11 guru in chosen by Srila Prabhupada, and you have translated Srimad Bhagavatam from Sanskrit to English. So you know so much things about ISKCON. Give us a bit idea to a common person like me who is not a follower of ISKCON. but always get impressed with the goodness and the well-being of this society. So give us a bit about ISKCON.
Right, sure.
Yeah.
ISKCON is a society which offers a particular and I think most important service to society, which is self-realization and then ultimately God realization. In the modern world, society is very complex, and we take advantage of the services. Many people, doctors, well, lawyers sometimes, doctors, lawyers, dentists, fitness trainers, and we go to school, we have teachers. So they're just, electricians,
Yeah.
plumbers. I mean, they're just innumerable different vocations, innumerable different professional people that help us in different ways. And someone has to really help with self-realization, because I hate to be the one to give this bad news, but we're all mortal. And if we love life, if we love other souls, and we love our own life, then we should try to arrange to extend it indefinitely. And that requires a spiritual technique.
Wow. Tell us one thing. You have more than 850 centers across worldwide. So how difficult and challenging is it for people like you and others, leaders, to keep the same practice and beliefs among this widespread world nowadays? The world is so different. So many new things are coming. Technology has changed the way of life. So how do you guide people, buds, to stay focused and follow the good, uh, 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 good learning of ISKCON?
Well, fortunately, Prabhupada, our founder Acharya, emphasized individual responsibility and initiative. Prabhupada resisted very strongly a highly centralized bureaucracy. And so as a result of the way he set up the Hare Krishna movement, we have good, strong leaders all around the world. And also, Prabhupada, he so strongly impressed all of us with his own purity, his own authenticity. And he presented the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavad Puran and this great Vaishnava tradition. He presented it so powerfully that we haven't gone off the rails. So I think it's really Prabhupada's credit, because of the way he trained us, both in terms of management culture and especially the power of his teachings. And because it's true, Krishna really is what he says he is in Bhagavad Gita.
Wow. One thing which a common person I have noticed, that in the busy streets of London or Melbourne or any other in US, we've seen ISKCON bhakts going to the streets, dancing, chanting Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, and people are this so exciting. People join them, they dance with them. Uh, how does this concept helps to spread ISKCON? Is it a good way to market ISKCON, or is it something like what's the way behind, what's the intention about it?
Yes. Our movement is called the Sankirtan movement. Sankirtan means together chanting, glorifying the Lord. As far as our specific presentation, another great thing about ISKCON is that Prabhupada created an open, free society. It's not cultish in the sense that those who are faithfully following our basic principles are free to express as ladies and gentlemen, with proper decorum, are free to express different views. So personally, I've started something called Krishna West. And because I strongly believe, based on my own studies of the history of religions and the sociology of religion and so on, and also having keenly observed the history of ISKCON, personally I've observed it for almost half a century, that I'm convinced that we should teach people to chant, for example, the Maha Mantra, to glorify God, but our presentation doesn't need to be highly ethnic, that we can present ourselves in a way which is more comfortable, more familiar to people in the West while still doing it in, I guess in the Gita's term, in a sattvic manner. So it's decent, it's proper, and so on. But at the same time, it's not strange or foreign or exotic, because ultimately, I believe that to really establish ourselves more powerfully and really become very much a mainstream, important spiritual tradition in the West, we have to keep all of our basic principles, not compromise our teachings or our personal practice, but we have to be part of society and not stand far outside of it culturally.
Okay, good. Now, going back to your journey on this, this movement, you have translated the Srimad Bhagavat from Sanskrit to English. How did you, get inspiration, and how difficult was it for you to learn Sanskrit and translate it to English? So, give us a bit idea about that journey.
Well, 1978, actually, I was in Brazil, and I was in charge of Latin America, and I realized there was a need for someone to step forward and help to finish Prabhupada's Bhagavatam. And everyone can do something, and so Krishna kind of gave me a certain ability with languages, and I always loved the Bhagavatam, and so somehow I was able to learn Sanskrit. I taught myself Sanskrit. Then I also got a doctorate in Sanskrit at Harvard, and but largely self-taught. And I have a colleague who's also a disciple of Prabhupada who has passed away several years ago, Gopi Pranadhana, an American Vaishnava who studied at Columbia, and he was very good at Sanskrit, so he rendered very valuable service to that project. I sort of organized a team, and we were able to do it.
Wow. Tell us about something about your Food for Life program. I heard that you guys, do such good thing to society. You also run hospitals. So apart from the religious activity, give us a bit idea about this.
Well, Food for Life is distributing food to needy people actually began in West Bengal,
Okay.
in Mayapur, because Prabhupada saw some of the local people. They had a terrible communist government for many years there, enabling West Bengal to become one of the poorest states in India. Anyway, so Prabhupada saw village people scavenging for food. He saw they were actually hungry, going through the rubbish trying to get food. And so it actually brought tears to his eyes. And he said that no one within so many miles of an ISKCON temple should ever be hungry. And so that launched Food for Life. And but it's not only material benefit, because Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita that if you simply take this food, patram puspam phalam toyam, you offer it to Krishna, to God, with gratitude, because it comes from God, then the recipients get not only material benefit, but also spiritual benefit. So it's
yeah. So talking about Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Shri Krishna was, he was a mentor to Arjun, and there was a war as well happened between Kauravas and Pandavas. So what does ISKCON say about those kind of, learning from the Srimad Bhagavad? When he says, Karam kiye ja, phal ki ichha mat kar, means you keep doing your work, don't expect the result. Result will automatically come.
yes.
So some of the, the Sri Krishna, preaching to Arjun, how does it relate from ISKCON in a practical way? Like, we all are nowadays a working professional. We are all busy. We are a bit confused, which religion we follow. How do we, program our day-to-day life? And whatever small time we get, we try to go to the God, through different ways. So what do you say to the people like me, what's the right way? How do I keep my focus, and how do I keep my energy towards God? Whatever belief I follow. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Krishna in Bhagavad Gita gives a very practical teaching. It's not sort of pie in the sky. And Arjun, for example, also had a full-time job. He was a prince. He was not in the forest somewhere meditating. And so Krishna taught him karma yoga. In this sense, karma means just what you do, your profession, and yoga means that you offer to Krishna. So Krishna says, whatever you do, make that an offering to me. So it doesn't, for example, you work in the film industry. And so whatever we do, why are you doing it? Of course, in most of the time in this world, people work because they have families. And so they go to work thinking that they're doing this for their family, for their children, or their wife or husband, and so on. But that those children or wife or husband, ultimately, they are children of God. They are children of Krishna. And ultimately, your power to work, the energy to work, the intelligence to work, that's coming from Krishna. And so we should be grateful. We ourselves are part of Krishna. Ultimately, in the entire universe, there's only one family spiritually, because Krishna says in the Gita, Pitahamasya Jagato, I'm the father of this universe, Mata, and the mother, Data, Pitamaha, and so on. And Arjuna said to Krishna, Pitasi lokasya characharasya, you are the father of the universe. So we are all families, just as you work for your family out of love. So ultimately, we are all in Krishna's family. And so whatever we're doing, we do it for Krishna. And that, of course, that includes our family, biological family.
Very well said, Acharya-ji. Do you think that it's difficult, it's a bit difficult for organization like ISKCON to convince people to follow the religious path, because especially the youngster they have so much access nowadays, access of technology, so much access of some of the beliefs which have changed over the time, like talking about marriage. In some places, not many marriages are happening, but people are still living together. People are separating fast. How do you feel that the teaching, that the beliefs and teaching of ISKCON or other religions are very important nowadays to bring the world back towards that spiritual state?
Right.
Yeah.
People are taking a lot of liberties nowadays. It's almost, you could say, a libertine society. At the same time, they're not happy. I mean, in America, it's just like sort of like, pharmaceutical nation. I mean, if you look at the number of people, I think Australia, there must be a healthy or unhealthy number of people who are taking pharmaceuticals. It's not that people are happy. There's certain laws. For example, you can eat junk food, but you won't feel good. Your body won't feel good. You'll get all kinds of diseases. And so, you know what they say, if everything else fails, read the instructions. And so Krishna is giving us a roadmap of how to live in this world so we can be happy and healthy, physically, emotionally, and ultimately spiritually. So as far as the young people, our experience is that when we present Krishna consciousness in a rational way, not as a religion, because ultimately it's not a religion, ultimately it is a spiritual science. And so just like, for example, if there's some new science in the medical field, no one cares where a medicine was invented or a procedure. If you are suffering from some medical issue and the doctor fortunately tells you we can fix this, who cares what country the medicine came from? And that's why it's so important that we not present Krishna consciousness as some ethnic thing. It's not. Krishna is giving a universal spiritual science for everyone. And if we understand it that way and present it that way, then people will accept it because it works.
So I'm sure you have so many bhakts following, and bhakts are living in all Western world and Eastern world. And now every day, world is globalization. It's already globalized. You get some of the issues like betting, the drinking or gambling, horse racing. All these things are exciting to the young generation, as I said earlier, and somehow it's becoming a way of life for so many people.
But actually,
Yeah.
For example, I just saw the latest statistic, and among teenagers in the United States, the level of, let's say, sex outside of marriage is actually decreasing. I don't know whether that's because their brains are melted from social media, or whether they're actually having some kind of moral renewal. But the fact is that it's just decreasing. People, it's like, the forbidden fruit is always attractive. So after so many centuries where sex and drugs was the forbidden fruit, and then finally, society became materialistic and anyone could do anything. And so there's that, that certain attraction. But once people actually experience these things, it's not satisfying. It's not satisfying. And so, those who are intelligent are beginning to understand this.
Yeah. I would like to, make a point here. I think this is a bit of like a reverse migration happening. So what we are noticing is that in the West, people have seen all those things over the years, and now they have concluded, okay, this is not the right way, and they are transforming themselves. So, for example, if you see, the more yogas are happening outside India, where it was originated, and whereas countries like Eastern countries, India and China, where they were a very good religious point of view at a certain time, now they are getting a bit opening up, and they're
materialistic.
So they're getting materialistic.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of like one way the world is improving.
Yes.
But on the other side, the world which was good is deteriorating.
No, actually, it's all perfectly logical. It's like, for example, let's say there's a train with so many cars, and the train goes around a curve, and so the front cars go around the curve. So when they pass, the front cars are going one direction, the back cars are going the opposite direction, but it's the same train. And so actually, it's a historical process where people, the Greeks talked about this, where let's say you have a society where it has certain moral principles. And the reason those principles are there is because of long experience. People realize that we cannot be happy and healthy and even survive as a society unless we follow these principles. But over time, people forget why those rules are in place, and it just seems like needless interference with people's lives and happiness, like it's none of your business, blah, blah, blah. And so then they throw away these rules and indulge themselves, and then they suffer and remember why they had the rules in the first place. And so, for example, the battle cry of the American Revolution was no taxation without representation. And so if you think about it, reproduction is not exclusively an individual act, because when people reproduce, they bring a child into the world, and what social science shows is that if children are not brought up in a good family with a mother and father, they're much more likely to commit suicide. They're much more likely to be poor, to have other mental problems, to engage in antisocial or self-destructive behavior. And so in other words, when children are not parented properly, and that means within a stable marriage, society pays a tax. Society pays for it. So it's a general ethical principle that whenever a group of people are significantly affected by behavior, they have a rational, justifiable interest to regulate that behavior. It's just like, for example, you may own some land, and you may, let's say, have a little cottage industry on your land, and you can say, this is my land, I can do what I want. But if your cottage industry is polluting the river that goes through other people's land, if you're polluting the air that other people have to breathe, you have to be regulated. And so this sort of exaggerated, irrational sense of individualism, there has to be a balance between individual freedom and social responsibility. So in countries like India and China, they're just going through the same process the West did, just a little bit later. But they will also realize that it's frustrating and makes life miserable and increases all kinds of bad things like mental illness, crime, and so on.
Very well said. Now let's come back to ISKCON thing. What's the role of women in ISKCON? Because if you see in other religion, women are taking leading role in they are making
Yes.
big sense. So do you think that in coming years ISKCON will also get a bit of more transformation? You will see more and more women coming into the top as gurus and spreading the because everything needs a bit of transformation.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. First of all, I have been one of the main leaders in ISKCON, one of the first to very strongly advocate equal opportunity for women in ISKCON. And yeah, so I'm absolutely committed to a woman's right to do any service for which she is qualified and inclined. And as you may know, in West Bengal, where our movement comes from, is a conservative part of India, but they have a female chief minister.
Yeah.
And so, absolutely, I think that it's simply not possible to significantly progress for ISKCON in the West if there's anything at all like male chauvinism. And so the first teaching of Krishna in Bhagavad Gita is that we are not the body. We are eternal souls. And so, of course, what social science shows is that on average, not always, but on average, men and women tend to make different choices in certain areas. They sort of have different inclinations on average. Now, it's interesting that on the right wing, they're sort of infamous for being science deniers when it comes to climate change. Interestingly, on the left, they are equally, if not more, science deniers on gender issues. And so it's not a question of, men are better or women are less. It has nothing to do with that. It's not about who's better. It's just about different inclinations on average, not always. But in any case, any woman has a right, according to Bhagavad Gita, to perform any service for which she's qualified. Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita that our duty comes from our nature. And he also says twice in the Bhagavad Gita that it is dangerous not to perform the duty born of your nature, that don't try to do someone else's duty. And so if a woman is qualified and inclined, let's say, to be a leader, and a man, in the name of protecting the woman, does not allow her to serve according to her real abilities, then he's actually putting her in danger. Because when people don't have the opportunity to fully express themselves and serve Krishna according to their own abilities, then they can't devote all of themselves to God. And so it's in the name of, and also in our tradition. If you look at the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition, there were women gurus. I mean, of course there were. There were great women gurus. This goes back thousands of years before the Hare Krishna movement. For example, in the Upanishads, one of the oldest strata of Vedic literature, we find Gargi, the sister of Garga Muni, who taught kings. She was a great guru. So yes, the whole point is that the real person is not the body, the real person is a soul, and therefore to become obsessed with someone's body is obviously hypocritical and inappropriate. So again, someone that's able, willing and able to do a particular service for Krishna has the freedom to do it.
Very well said. Now talking about ISKCON, what is the current situation across the world? Like, for example, it started in India and US. It's doing very well in India. Across the globe, which are the continents where you feel it still need to develop? Like, for example, in Africa, is it present in Africa or South America? Or so, how do you feel? What's the situation, and
yes.
What are your leadership as a thing to spread more there?
Yeah. Start with Latin America, because in 1974, Prabhupada asked me to take charge of Latin America, which I did for several years, and movement's strong there. We have thousands and thousands of bhaktas, thousands and thousands of Vaishnavas all over Latin America, and without exception. And there's not a single country in Latin America that doesn't have many Vaishnavas. And in some of the countries, for example, there are thousands just in Brazil and in Mexico, and many and all over. In Africa, yeah, Hare Krishna is certainly sub-Saharan Africa. It's a little tricky in the Muslim-dominated North Africa for obvious
But I guess
reasons.
it's present in Nairobi. I seen that in.
Oh, not only Nairobi, it's all over. It's all over Africa.
Yeah.
It's all over, and it's very strong in South Africa. Really, I mean, Kenya, everywhere. I mean, so the Hare Krishna was all over Africa. I would say more sub-Saharan Africa.
Yeah.
It's also, there are thousands and thousands of devotees in the former Soviet Union, all over the former Soviet Union. And interestingly, I think that, and Australia is very strong. I think that we need to retool a little bit in the first world. And by the first world, I mean, of course, the Western world. I mean, certainly Europe. I mean, Western Europe and increasingly Eastern Europe also is sort of making their way toward the first world. And United States, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Japan also is obviously first world. China, actually, the movement. I mean, there's a very large number of devotees in China, although there, in order to stay in the good graces of that government, they obviously can't be very extroverted. But the Chinese are very attracted to Krishna consciousness. The first world has been a tougher nut to crack. And although we have a lot of outstanding programs, all over North America, Europe, and Australia, New Zealand, but we need to do a lot more. And I think when it comes to the first world especially, we really need to integrate in those areas where we can do so without compromising anything which is spiritually essential for us. And so external things like dress or let's say cuisine, musical styles, those things, and the standard Krishna gives in the Gita. Krishna doesn't say in the Bhagavad Gita that offer me chutney and pakora. He says, offer me sattvic bhojan, food in the mode of goodness. So there is a criteria. I mean, you can't dress in any way for Krishna. You can't be indecent. But if you remain in the sattva-gun, if you remain in this virtuous mode, so your dress is decent, clean, appropriate, and your food, obviously vegetarian, and so on. So if we remain in the sattvic culture, then we have to, I think in the first world, I think it's futile to think that we're going to culturally colonize the first world. Not going to happen. So don't hold your breath. What we need to do is not try to culturally colonize first world countries, but simply give them a spiritual science within the sattvic elements of their own culture.
Let's talk about the advantage of sattvic food, like vegetarian.
Yes.
Many people don't find vegetarian food a good option because, as per their understanding, it has some limitation in a menu.
Oh, really? Wait! But those people are really, in the Stone Ages. First of all, I mean, eating meat, especially red meat, is really health-wise. It's like smoking. You might as well chain smoke in terms of the health effects. So when we see people smoking, we pity them because they obviously people are really unable to have a rational human life. And so I mean, meat causes cancer. Period. Meat causes cancer, and so it's not healthy. It involves the most horrible brutality. So I mean, why not be a cannibal for that matter? Because someone that has spiritual vision, it's like saying, well, I mean, on what possible grounds can one justify horrible brutality, horrible cruelty to creatures who we know very well scientifically have a complex range of emotions, are definitely conscious. It's this hypocritical, nonsensical legal policy where let's say if you kill someone's little pet dog, I mean, they'll hang you for it. But the point is, a cow or a bull is equally conscious. And so we have to derive rights. Rights are intrinsic to a creature itself. Otherwise, you get to this barbarism like, the decadent Roman emperors where if they put their thumb up, you live, thumb down, you die. Rights do not emanate from the whim of some leader. The right is intrinsic to the person himself. So you have certain rights as a citizen, not because some leader by his or her whim agrees to honor them, but the rights are within you. So, and how can you separate rights from the fact that a creature is conscious, has a complex range of emotions? And so the fact that it's still legal to brutally, cruelly murder, massacre feeling creatures is just absolute barbarism. It's just like if you go back in previous ages, people didn't see what the problem was with slavery. They didn't see a problem. We now see it as an evil. And so first of all, on ethical grounds, participating in this evil meat industry just means that someone really is lacking the most basic moral instincts. They really have a problem as a human being. Secondly, you could say, well, it's necessary. It causes cancer, and it causes all. So why is someone engaged in wicked, cruel, murderous activity in order to give themselves cancer? This is so irrational. It's so absurd. And as far as saying vegetarian food is boring, people that say that, they're like, I don't know, at least like 30 years behind. As we know now, there's an infinity of delicious food choices for vegetarians and vegans. And so to say it's not an interesting menu is just, again, it's just almost an incomprehensible degree of foolishness and irrationality.
One more thing about the food which we want to touch upon is that nowadays people are using a lot of food which are conservative, like they are preservative, and even if it is a vegetarian food, they go to supermarket, buy something is ready, and then just warm it in a
Yes.
microwave and have it. How do you feel that? How good is the fresh cooking?
Yes. Yeah, obviously, because who are we even talking about? At least among Western people, I don't know about immigrants, but among Western people, if you look at like say in America, they have this big chain called Whole Foods Markets, or it's a huge like natural food supermarket chain. And what you find always is that not only that chain, but any whole, natural foods, you always find them in neighborhoods where you have a higher level of education. So eating all this junk food is something more for the Shudras, to be honest. And so it's kind of ironic that people who come from the most vegetarian country in the world, a country that was literally India, thousands of years ahead of other parts of the world ethically, thousands of years ahead. And now for someone to come from that country and not only engage in these evil acts, but even when they eat vegetarian food, to eat, I hate to say this, I hate to sound, unkind, it's like Shudra food. Because again, there's a direct proportion in America between what your educational level is and what kind of food you eat. So for someone with an education who actually is able to read and understand science and to eat junk food to poison your children and poison yourself, it's people really need to wake up.
Yeah. How do you see the people who live sattvic life, eat sattvic food, do a bit of exercise, as compared to people who probably eat junk food, drink, and then they go to gym to do exercise and spend money, kind of thing? So is this you find is a waste, and also the impact on the environment?
I think you know as well as I do that it's you sort of damage yourself in the morning and then try to work it off in the afternoon. So and you cannot exercise away the cancer that you're creating by eating meat. Not going to happen. You can exercise all day and night till the cows come home, and you're still going to get cancer, at a much higher rate if you eat this meat. And junk food, no, you can't. When you poison your body, you can't just exercise. And that's why you see athletes, die at 45 from a heart attack or something. They're professional athletes.
So, friends, we are with the H.D. Das Goswami ji. Very intense discussion, very informative. We're going to talk about. He has written 2 books
lately.
a comprehensive guide to Bhagavad Gita with literal translation. And the second book title looks quite interesting, Quest for Justice. It's a select tales with modern illumination from the Mahabharata. So, Acharya, can you give us a bit idea about this book, Quest
Yes.
for Justice, what it is about? Yeah.
Here comes the infomercial. Infomercial warning. This book, Quest for Justice, I was invited several years ago to give a week-long seminar in Mahabharata at a prominent yoga community in the Bahamas. And so this is a transcription of the lectures I gave in that seminar. And I gave sort of the academic background of how the Mahabharata is seen, and then tried to show how it's relevant, how these are real people. The Pandavas, Krishna, of course, Duryodhan, all these people, these are real people, and in many important ways are like us. And so what can we learn from what they did right and what they did wrong?
Well said. So friends, we were with H.D.Goswami ji. We will take a short break. After that, we will have Guru Vandana, who is a ISKCON temple follower, a big name in Melbourne. She's a great devotee and doing a lot of hard works, getting donations and marketing, and getting people comfortable. She has got some questions from your bhakts. I think you have a big, stars have big fan following, and you have big bhakts followings. So she's going to be asking you a couple of questions. But thank you so much for talking to PTU Melbourne. And PTU Melbourne, it's so enlightened and so excited to meet you today. Thank you so much. Keep the good work going on.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. Thank you for coming out. So we'll end this little thing here, and then we'll be back on the air in just a few minutes, probably.
Beautiful.